This fall, Katie and Christine and I are preaching this sermon series about some of the questions Jesus asked in the four Gospels, including this one from the Gospel according to St. Mark. Jesus came to Jericho as he and his disciples and a large crowd were leaving Jericho. Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, was sitting by the roadside. And when he heard that it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout and say, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Many sternly ordered him to be quiet, but he cried out even louder, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." Jesus stood still and said, "Call him here." And they called the blind man, saying to him, "Take heart, get up, he's calling you." So throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. Then Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" The blind men said to Jesus, "Rabbi, let me see again." Jesus said to Bartimaeus, "Go, your faith has made you well." And immediately he regained his sight and followed Jesus on the way. Pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight, O Lord, our rock and our redeemer. Amen. So Jesus is on his way from Galilee to Jerusalem to celebrate the last Passover of his life, and he passes through the ancient city of Jericho, which is about 15 miles northeast of Jerusalem and therefore today in the West Bank. Jericho is one of the oldest cities in the world. It was already 9,000 years old when Jesus visited. A blind beggar named Bartimaeus is there sitting on the curbside playing a bad rendition of Amazing Grace on his guitar. And he has his instrument case open at his feet to catch the quarters thrown at him by these religious pilgrims on their way to Jerusalem. And when blind Bartimaeus hears that this itinerant, hotshot preacher and miracle man is in the crowd, he stands up and waves his arms and raises an ungodly cacophony, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." The whole crowd tells him to shut up, but like Elizabeth Warren, he persists. "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." And then Jesus responds with one of the 307 questions he asks in the four Gospels. "What do you want me to do for you?" They say there's no things as a dumb question, but this one comes pretty close. Don't you think Bartimaeus was puzzled? "What do I want you to do for me? Jesus, I'm blind as a brick. Let me see again." There were several dentists and one fetching dental hygienist in my Connecticut congregation. So every spring break, we would send a dental team down to a school for poor kids in Honduras. When we started doing this many years ago, we collected all kinds of used dental equipment in the States, chairs, dental lamps, drills, basins, and we shipped it to Honduras. And then every spring, when we got there, we would haul all this equipment out of storage and turn a classroom into a temporary dental clinic. Put all this equipment in there and laid pipe for the water, and we would see kids for a week. Kathy would see 15 people a day, parents, students, teachers, 15 people a day for 6 days, 90 people in a week. She did this for 7 years. Meanwhile, another member of our team, Jim the optician, was turning another classroom into an optical clinic. He spent all year collecting old pairs of eyeglasses from his friends and neighbors, all year about 300 pairs, and then he'd take them to Honduras and he'd examine parents, teachers, other members of the village, and try to match up these various prescriptions to their optical needs. And he saw 60 people a day for 5 days. 60 people a day, 300 pairs of eyeglasses. And tried to match them up, right? And he sees this woman of a great age who needs a very rare prescription. He determines she needs this prescription you almost never see, and he's stunned when he realizes he has that very prescription. That almost never happens. You just try to get as close as you can. You just try to restore some modicum of sight to these people who are with failing eyesight. But in this case, it was a perfect match. And she goes outside and she weeps and she says, I can see the mountains. What do you want me to do for you? Indeed. Might be a stupid question, but eventually Jesus restores his sight, and now blind Bartimaeus, with 20/20 vision, follows Jesus all the way to Jerusalem. What do you want me to do for you? He's been asking that question of each one of us ever since. What do you want me to do for you? What are you doing here? What do you hope will happen between you and Jesus this morning? You could be riding your bike on Lakeshore Drive. You could be playing golf at Skokie Country Club. You could be reading the New York Times. What are you doing here? Someone's here because his wife dragged him here. Someone's here because he thinks it's respectable. Someone's here because she wants to set a good example for her children. A young doctor, new to town, who was opening a new medical practice, admitted to me that he joined my large and prosperous congregation because he knew everybody there would have insurance. A lot of potential patients. I knew a woman with a beautiful soprano voice who didn't believe in God or Jesus, but she wanted to sing Bach, so she came to church every Sunday. The doctor, by the way, kind of liked it and stuck around, eventually became a trustee. That's okay. Lots of reasons for joining church. Some of the reasons are good and some are bad, but it's good to pause now and then and ask ourselves, what do we hope from coming here? What do we want him to do for us? Maybe we want him to do for us the same thing he did for blind Bartimaeus. Open our blind eyes. Maybe we can see for the first time that not implacable wrath, but unfailing love is the beating heart of the universe. Maybe our blind eyes will open and we can tell that we are greatly loved. He went all the way to Golgotha for us. The Czech writer Milan Kundera once put it this way in one of his novels: all our faults are being redeemed by love's magic eyes. Yes, love's magic eyes. You see what he's saying, right? That when we can see ourselves as God sees us, it's only then that we can live up to and reach up to the person God is certain we can become. We have to see ourselves with God's eyes. I knew a woman once who was married to a man who was eager to confirm all the suspicions she had about herself. She feared she was a little slow, a little dull, and he was eager to confirm that suspicion in her. She feared she was a little plain, and he was quick to tell her that there was nothing attractive about her. He didn't use those words, wasn't that mean, but you know how we can tell each other so much with subtle, silent whispers. Finally, she had the good sense to leave him, but then she met a man who loved her as she'd never been loved before. And I had the privilege of conducting that second wedding, that second marriage. And as we were sitting down together to talk about the realities of marriage, I asked her, why do you want to get married again since your first foray into matrimonial bliss wasn't exactly successful? And she said this. She said, he's given my life back to me. I'm not exaggerating. She says, he brought me back from the dead. He tells me I'm witty and charming. He tells me I'm beautiful, and I know he's lying, or at least that's what I thought at first. Now I almost believe him. You see what was happening to her? She was living up to the reflection she saw in his eyes. He thought she was beautiful, so she started saying the same thing. All her faults were being redeemed by love's magic eyes. It's a tale as old as time, right? She'll love that sappy old Angela Lansbury song from Beauty and the Beast. This is a gift from my daughter. She was 9 years old. We were living in Metro, New York. She wanted to see Beauty and the Beast on Broadway. I wanted to see King Lear, but she won. She dragged me to Disney. As you know, Beauty and the Beast is about a beautiful young woman who loves an ugly beast back into the human community. It's a tale as old as time. The musical ran on Broadway for 13 years, 5,461 performances. The Disney film was the first animated film ever to be nominated for Best Picture at the Academy Awards. Since then, Up and Toy Story 3 have joined Beauty and the Beast. You know the story. A witch turns a handsome young prince into a hideous beast for a thoughtless cruelty, and she condemns him to stay that way until he can learn to love. Someone must love him, and he must love in return. And the curse is particularly cruel because who could ever hope to love him as he is now? He despairs that he'll ever escape this curse, and one by one the rose petals fall from the rose, and when the last one floats down, his beastliness will be permanent. But then, accidentally, a beautiful young woman wanders into his enchanted castle, and at first she's repulsed by the sight of him. He says, she will never see me as anything but a monster. But then she tends to his wounds, and she listens to his sadness, and the way Disney tells the story, at least, she gazes into his eyes. And there are these beautiful sky blue eyes, almost hidden by his ugliness. And slowly, so slowly, his humanity begins to return to him. At the beginning of the movie, he walks on all fours. By the end, he is waltzing with her on two. Her love begins to break the spell, and he becomes human again. All our faults are being redeemed by love's magic eyes. And the beautiful thing about this story, it's not the beast, not only the beast who's restored to humanity. Everybody in his castle is the same way. Everybody in his castle, all the human beings have become inhuman. And so Cogsworth, the obsessive-compulsive steward who's wound just a little too tight, becomes, guess what? A clock. And Lumiere, whose glamour is just a little too luminescent, becomes, of course, a candlestick. All of these figures are being undone by their own shortcomings. One of the characters says, there is so little left of me. We are all becoming things. And I find this to be a fascinating comment about what happens in the land of lovelessness, right? We become things. People become reified. They become thingified. There is so little left of me. We are all becoming things. But then love breaks the spell, and all of these figures come back into the human community. All our faults are redeemed by love's magic eyes. What do you want me to do for you? Blind, now I see. Scorned, now I love. Beautifully loved, I can beautifully love and beautifully live. Graced, we can grace each other into gracefulness.